you must have a good technical, and it works. It was the same when I arrived. I had a problem here to use the internet, but it came to excellent technical, and I could connect my laptop with the internet of Mongolia. I could read all the data in Mongolia from the statistical office. So what I want just to explain is that if you see to such a table, you get already a first impression of the structure of the economy. We can see the different volumes or the different amounts. And we see in the first row how much agriculture, forestry, and fishing is delivering, for example, to manufacturing. These are the 676 million or billion of cubics. And we'll try if this one's working or not. There's no better reason. Okay. Okay, then I cannot show you this automatically. There's no battery inside. It says no, it works how you make it. Yeah, again, thank you. You see here this figure I want to show you. It shows agriculture, forestry, fishing is delivering some commodities, some goods to manufacturing. You see the same, how much, not much construction. And what is here of high interest is the so-called intra-sectoral flow. Intra, not inter-sectoral flow. Inter-sectoral flow means between different, and then intra-sectoral flow means inside the same sector. It can be from one company working on one farm in agriculture, handing over some seeds to forestry. Or forestry offers some issues for fishing. So these are transactions which are taking place inside the same aggregated sector. These are all the diagonal in this matrix are intra-sectoral flows. They show the interconnection in the same sector, in the same branch. So if you have your manufacturing and you see this big amount for manufacturing, it means there can be a delivery from food to maybe to textile, from textile to, from garment to textile. So all intra-sectoral flows within manufacturing. For that reason, you see all the amounts in the main diagonal are very high. I think we can also see the second one, the second part of our same table. You see here it starts with accommodation and the other issues, and you see that also accommodation and food service are takes from agriculture a big amount. 8,478 up to education. And the final one, we have here 3 slides. Show us now again what we have already seen in the other table this morning. We have here the final private consumption, the capital formation, the exports, and finally again our total output. It is the same table which we have already seen this morning, only a little bit other sketch or a little bit different shown, but it has the same contents as you can see, because also here you can see that the total input what we have shown this morning for other service activities, it was the 86,000, it was here this figure, is again total output equals again our total input. Excuse me that I repeat very often the figures, because I know from the experience from my own or with other lectures, it is unfortunately necessary to repeat it very often, because it should be enter your brain. And for that reason, I repeat it more often. And perhaps if you understood it from the first mentioning, then I have to apologize. But not all might understand it from the first point which I mentioned. So you see, you can make the interpretation of such a table. And you can look where are the highest figures, where are the lowest figures, what is the total expenditure, how much construction is responsible or will be delivering construction construction where I must see my own construction must be here. Construction to capital formation, and I think it's not surprising, you know it, as I already mentioned in the morning. Capital construction is the main deliverer of capital formation. These are the buildings, these are the bridges, these are the streets. All this capital formation, I know. This and this. I hate the microphone. At the university I have a big hall, and I never need a microphone because I have a very loud voice. But I see for the Mongolian my voice is not loud enough. Okay, I will stay here and we go around the microphone. Okay, no problem. So you see that here what I have just mentioned, that the construction is one of the main supplier of cross capital formation. We have again the figure, what we have seen here for mining and quarrying, also the high figure for exports. You see, you get an overview about the economic structure, I would say more about the dimension of the flows inside Mongolia in the first quadrant for the production part, inside Mongolia for the final use, the final demand part, and also on the left-hand side we know the primary input part. For example, we can see intermediate imports are necessary for human health and social work activities. They are included all the hospital, and their inputs are of an amount of 52,000. So each figure can be interpreted. What I already mentioned you in the morning is, if you want to go ahead and you want a little bit more make comparison, it will be better not to see only the absolute figure, but to try to get relations, to try to compute shares. And for that reason, we are jumping to the so-called input coefficients. Input coefficients, as I mentioned it already this morning, are calculated by dividing each entry of the input-output table by the corresponding total. The input coefficients can be interpreted as the shares of cost or goods, because we have the input side, services and primary inputs and total output. As the input coefficients cover all inputs, including the residual for operating surplus, they add up to 1 unity, and input coefficients can also be calculated for final demand categories according to the same procedure. That means we look for the column of the final use and we make the same calculation. What are the formula for the input coefficient? You can remember this morning I mentioned I and I mentioned J. And I said I is for the rows and J is for the columns. Now we have here the different quadrants and the traditional input coefficient for here for quadrant 1 for domestic intermediate. The input coefficient of industry J is defined as Aij is Xij divided by Xj. X means the absolute term, the absolute value in the original input-output table. We will see it just with the next example how this figure has been compiled. I means a row, J means a column, and you see Xj is always the total of the column. For example, if I asked you how is the input coefficient A23 compiled, then you had to answer it is row 2 and the cell in column 3. A23 will be the second row and the third column. So if we have to do with coefficients, always look for the subscripts, because the subscripts tell you what row is covered and what column is included. So if I would ask you what is A55, what you would take, I believe automatically you would take 5, first is I, second is J, 5, 5. Aha, that means 5th row and 5th column. And what is this again? What I call intra-secular flow. It is within the same cell, because from the output side by row it is the fifth row, and from the input side by column it is also the fifth column. A55. So I think the input coefficients are defined according to rows and columns. X describes the absolute value in the input-output table, and the absolute value xij is a cell. So if you have a 20 by 20 matrix, you have 400 cells in the input matrix, the input coefficient matrix. We have seen that we have also added to quadrant 1 the quadrant 3 below, the primary inputs. There we can also compile input coefficients. We take the same total input xj here, but we do not now using the x from the first quadrant of the table, we use the term p for primary inputs from the third quadrant. So you have an input coefficient aij, but not as here for the values in the first quadrant of the table, but for p for the primary input. And the next one is for quadrant 2, final demand categories, you can also compile input coefficients, but here we are using the term y for the final demand, yk for final demand. So it is, I think, one element in the column, for example, for private consumption divided by total private consumption. I believe it will become clearer if we look to some of the data results. So, here we have the matrix of input coefficients for the first 10 columns. Look, for example, for the input coefficients A13. A13, first row, third column. What we have there, which figure? We have there 29.7. How we arrived at 29.7? Let us go back to our basic input-output table. We divide row 1, column 3. We divide the 676,765 by the total input 2,281,100. If you divide these both, this one divided by this one, you get the so-called coefficient. In order for you to understand better that coefficients can also be expressed in percentages, I have multiplied the coefficients only here by 100. For that reason you have there the volume. Let's look again in our other table of the coefficients. We have here the coefficient. Normally we would have 0.297. 0.297. I have multiplied it by 100, so I have here 29.7. So I take the figures from the basic input-output table, from a cell, and divide them by the total input in the last row of the basic input-output table. And then I multiply it by 100 only here to explain to you why. Because what you can now identify, you can identify manufacturing needed 29.7% of its total input from agriculture. I think you can also say 0.297 is compared with 1 unit, because I think this one here, you see, is not now 1, but it is 100%. All add up to 1 or multiplied with 100, all add up to 100%. Let's make another example. Let's look for the intra-sectoral flow for agriculture to agriculture. That means A11. Let's go back how the 11.6% or the 0.116 has been compiled. I believe if you are willing, you can already tell what you believe what we should do if we compile the intra-sectoral input coefficient. What figures we have to look at and what figures we have to combine. You see, you are all exhausted from this figure, 202, that is x11, and divided it by x1, by the total input. 202 divided by 1,746, and so on and so on, that brings us up our 11%. The same can also be done for the primary inputs. Let's say we take here as an example the imports of agriculture. We see the imports of agriculture amount to, big amount, so 212 is more or less a little bit more than the infra-sectoral, and we divide this figure again by the total. So we will see it must be a little bit more than 11%. Let's see to our resulting matrix of input coefficient. So what we had there 12.1. Imports 12.1. So you can say agriculture, seeing its cost structure, its input structure, needs 12.1% of its overall total input from foreign countries, from abroad, like imports. So I think it is not difficult. You must only have in mind, I want to express the absolute figures as shares, as coefficients, as relations. And the relation is always my total input. I refer all the individual data in the cells as the total input. What I have done now for primary inputs, what we have seen here for the intermediates, can also be done, as I told you, for the final demand component. Let's take, for example, here, how we derive the 16.1% for manufacturing to final consumption expenditure. This is a coefficient we have now seen it is with Y, but you can also say it with X, it's no problem, but I say Y and P only gives people the information. It has not to do with the first quadrant of the table. Y refers to the second quadrant and P to the third quadrant. That's behind. So I think we know it is the third row, and here it is the 21st column. So we can also say it is Y1, the first final demand. It's no problem how you fix it. But I will show you how we come to the 16.1%. We go back again, 4 slides to our basic table. Now we must look for final demand, for final use, and we will find the figure. Here is the figure, what we are looking for. Manufacturing has delivered or has sold 1,036 or 1,036 million or thousand divided by the overall total of private consumption. We always take the last row. These are now the so-called total input of private consumption, the total input of capital formation, and of fixed cost. So you see always, we took only the data from the first, second, and third quadrant and divide them by the total inputs or by the total final use, and they are shown in the last row of the basic input-output table. So I think it's no problem. It is easy. It is like if you have two different data and you combine them. It is only as a term which is important that the people know you are making an input coefficient, because we will just see the output coefficient. I believe you will already feel what will now happen. If I think in the next step, we take the same figures. But if we talk about output coefficients, we do not take the total input as basis of our coefficient, but we are using the total output as coefficient. So you will just see in one moment how this works if we look for the output coefficient. So I hope you have seen that if you compare the input coefficient, you get a better information as if you only look to the absolute figures, because now you have the relation built up, and not only the absolute data. Output coefficients are calculated by dividing each entry of the input-output table, that we already know. But now we substitute not by the corresponding input total, but by the corresponding row total. I think not the total of the column as by input coefficients, but the total of the rows. They can be interpreted as the shares in total output, or so-called market shares for commodities, and also for primary input. The same as with the inputs, as the outputs coefficient cover all outputs to input. The output coefficient cover all outputs to intermediate and to final use, including the changes in inventories. They add up also to unity. The formula, what you see, Xij is the same. The coefficient is not now A, it's the coefficient O. O is for output, the abbreviation O. Oj will be Xij, not divided by Xj, but by Xi, because we have the final column in the row. I are the rows, J are the columns. And that is an issue one often happens also in universities, that the students often make mistakes because they not aware that they have to look sincerely what is the first subject, what is the second one. If I say here now Ij, that is the same figure in our input output table. But Xj is quite different from Xi. Xj is the total input and Xi is the total output. And you will just see in some minutes the same figure have two different meanings. If you divide it with by total input or if you divide it with by total output. So I think the same we have for the second quadrant. You see here how Y instead of we have not here P, we have here Y for final demand, Yik divided by Xi, and here we have for quadrant 3 the same OP for primary inputs, P Lj divided to PL, that means here the total. So let's take again our agriculture to manufacturing. Here we have agriculture. I again multiplied the whole. You see, here at the end, you see the total output is again 100% or 1. You can make it by 1, and then you have only, I think the point not here for the percentages, but only for the units. So but I make it again to explain it to you easier, that you see how many percentage of the overall the total output has been delivered, has been sold to the other branches, or has been sold to final use. Let's go us back to our example, agriculture to manufacturing. Here we have the amount 38.8. I will try to avoid the you can make it so I will fast as I have to, because now I have to go back many slides. But perhaps we can make with the other. I think we have the absolute figure in this cell. That is important, how much agriculture has delivered to manufacturing. You can remember it was 676,765. Output in Turix agriculture to manufacturing 676,765. This one will not be divided by the input coefficient through the total input 2,281. It will be instead of divided by the total output. And the total output is of agriculture different from the total input of manufacturing, because the total output is 1,746. And that will give us now a coefficient that is 38.6. If we compare this coefficient, 38.8, with our input coefficient, which we have computed before, the input coefficient has a value of 29.7. What means it? the same absolute figure of 686 million or 1,000 Turings has a different meaning for the producer, this is the sector of agriculture, and for the user, that is our manufacturer. So for, I think what we just see here is that agriculture delivers to manufacturing just 14% of its output to manufacturing. I think the main user will be food industry among the manufacturers. Just 39% of its output will be handed over, will be sold, will be delivered as an intermediate output to manufacturing. At the same time, this 686 are from the input side, when I go back again to the input coefficient, from the input coefficient you see the same 686 are for manufacturing, only a portion of 29.7%, lower than the output for agriculture. Why? Because the total output is different from the total input. The total output is taken into account for agriculture, and for the input coefficient, the total input is taken into account for manufacturing. And if the data are different, also the coefficients must be different. If you have the same nominator, but I think below you have a different denominator. Now I believe you must be able to explain me why the input coefficient and the output coefficient are the same, are equal in the main diagonal. Why the input and the output coefficient are not different, but are the same. Let's see here, input coefficient, infrasectorial 11.6, 4.1, 9.5. Let's go to the output coefficient. Why there are the same coefficients? Who has understood the issue? Aha, the same, 11.6, 4.1, 9.9, and so on for all 20 seconds. Why? I believe that some of you have understood it, but it's a little bit shy now to answer when I ask you. I think the best would I take it in my mouth, because then I cannot forget it.
Because
So,
this is
why?
symmetric.
Be-
Symmetric.
Correct. Because from the output side and from the input side you have the same figure. Yeah, we have learned total output is total input. So I think you have the same figure I think you have the same nominator and the same denominator. You have the absolute figure, 686 we had, and you divide it. Professor, you are right that you are a professor, so I think you see that we have here, I think, the same result, because the 11.6% are derived from our 686 and so on, divided by the total input or by the total output. Both are the same figure. So I think it is also, if you are compiling a matrix of input coefficient or a matrix of output coefficient, you have a control. If your main diagonal have not the same result from both approaches, output and input coefficient, you must be wrong. All the off-diagonal coefficients are different, but the main diagonal coefficients are the same. According to that, what we have learned from the University of Business in Ulaanbaatar. So you see that we have here, that is a very important point. I think it is not heavy to understand. I think you must only have in mind, I have a table. In this table I do not make the interpretation. I sum up, or I make another total. You must only have in mind that each of the in each of the IoT, you have the same figure, but they can be analyzed by column or by rows. If they are analyzed by column, you can compile so-called input coefficient by using the figures in the individual cells divided by the total input. The total input is the last row of the table. Or you say, no, I'm not interested in the input structure or the cost structure. I would be much more interested in the output. Who are the main customer of agriculture? Then you look not for the cost, for the input structure, you look for the output structure, for the sales structure. And then you do not divide the individual cells by the total input, but you divide them by the total output. And that means the last column, I think the last column in the row that are discussed. I have a very little example in my what you can make if you like, I think before the end of our day-to-day. So I hope that you are able, it's only a 3x3 table, and you should calculate some input and some output coefficients. Please try it. If it doesn't work, it is not bad, because afterwards you get the result, and then you can say, okay, I put now it into my solution, and then you have the correct solution. Okay, so we come back to the coefficient. Input we have learned, output coefficients we have learned. What now will be the next one? The next one will be backward linkages and forward linkages. The backward linkages describe the interconnection of a particular industry to other industry from which it purchases intermediate inputs. That sounds a little bit like our input coefficient. Because also in our input coefficients we quantify the delivery of other suppliers to us as producer. The purchases from other industries, from which it purchases intermediate inputs from the demand side. The demand-oriented backward linkages can be measured by the column sum of direct input coefficients, or by the column sum of inverse. Inverse will be handled later on, so we concentrate at the moment only on direct input coefficients. I go back to our matrix of input coefficients and show you, no, I think I already, no. I will show you this, I think that is the best example I saw. I picked it from our meeting with the German Automobile Manufacturers Association some years ago. We also made some courses on input-output. And we have here, I think, an excellent example of backward linkages, and you have it already also in your file in the, I think, also translated moratorium. Households. Households are buying cars. Makes no sense if you buy here the car with a left-hand wheel or with a right-hand wheel. Both cars can be driven. How the cars are produced? You'll see, you need for the car tires, steering wheel, and detonators. Tires, steering wheel, and detonators. Tires are produced in the rubber manufacturing industry. Steering wheel are coming from plastic manufacture, and detonator are coming from electrical engineering. So these three arrows are deliveries of these branches to the motor vehicle industry. But tires, steering wheel, and detonator must at first be produced. They will be produced by their own cost and input structure of the rubber industry, of the plastic industry, and of the electrical engineering industry. So we go one step behind and we see engine rim are necessary for the tires. Wire is necessary for the detonator. Power varnish are necessary for steering and are necessary for tires and also necessary for detonator. So these three commodities are originating from chemical industry, machinery, and non-ferrous metals. So you see, we start with demand and with the final production of the car. That is the first round of our production process. Then we have the second round of our production process. That is the previous one to this one. Then we have here a lot of more production processes where you have many, many, many more of your 20 branches in Mongolia or in another country. So that is more or less the idea of the backward effect. You can start and you can quantify how many industries are involved finally in the production of an automobile, of a car. That means backward effect. I think it is an excellent example to understand what is behind the backward effect. And if you add up all these effects all together, then you have the chance to come to direct backward linkages in Mongolia. And you see here, for example, for manufacturing, the total direct linkage with this. The direct backward effect is for the manufacturing 0.57, you could also say again, 54% of the overall production of overall total inputs are backward effects, are given to other industries during the processing of the manufacturing. These data are coming from our matrix of input coefficient. I will show you where they can be found. You see here already, it is only for the inter-industrial sector, for inter-industrial linkages, backward effect inter-industrial linkages for 1 to 20. And if we go back to our matrix of input coefficient, now I go back some slides because I believe it's important to know where it comes from. So here you see now 1 to 20. What you see here, our figure. Here we have again the percentage, but if you go 3 steps way to the left, we have 0.542. That is the figure we have just seen from the direct total backward effect in manufacturing in Mongolia in the year 2010. These backward effects can change from year to year. It depends what inputs are changed. Do you have a new technology where you need more plastics instead of iron and steel? Are you looking more for imported goods instead of domestically produced goods? So I think it might be of interest if you have more of the tables to make the time series and to see what has happened in the last 10 years or in the last 5 years. Or I think what already the NSO has done, 2005, 2010, 11, 12, 13, or also take into account 2008. And we have already seen today from Mr. Erdogan some figures which were compared. So I think what I want that you should understand is the backward effect. An individual backward effect describes the previous production steps of a production chain if you produce one product. There are many more industry involved on the previous production steps. At the end we will see that it's no more than the inverse if we take more into account. But for the moment it's our direct backward effect, and the total of all the interconnections are seen for all 20 branches from the input coefficient as here the subtotal. If you add up all these data, you have here 0.217. Let's go again as the last example for our backward effect for agriculture. Then we will have the same figure. Yeah, that's our figure, what I have done, 0217. I hope that this example, which I have just presented before, that this example you have in mind, because you can imagine that this is not the end of our production process. If you have been studying economics, I think there was often named the name Professor Böhmberg. He was an economist, and he has given a lot of information about the production process and about the different production steps. And here we have only, as I explained to you, 2, but this can be added by more and more and more. And if you follow follow this one more and more to the left-hand side, you can also finally understand why so many industries are involved in the production of a car. Because they are intermediate deliveries. They are delivering intermediates on this step. They are selling intermediate goods on this step, on the next one, and so on. It is like an iterative procedure. You go back step by step. And if you would cite Karl Marx, who has said, I think all can be traced back to capital and to labor. So we will see tomorrow that all the intermediate inputs which we are here discussing can be traced back to some labor input. Because labor is the main important primary input in an economy. But we will see it tomorrow. So, but as we have learned, we have input coefficient, we have output coefficient, we have backward effect. So I think automatically we know we have also forward linkages. Forward linkages are not, if you go back, but forward linkages are interested in the customer, in the purchaser, in the user. And you see here, forward linkages describe the interconnection of a particular industry to those industries to which it sells it onto. This is the supply side. The other where it buys from, it was the demand side. It's very important, this difference. And the supply-oriented forward can be measured by the column sum of direct output coefficients. Aha! The sum of direct input coefficients were our backward effects, and the sum of our output coefficients for the 20 sectors will be, I think, our supply-oriented forward linkage. So, what is here? Let's look again back to our output coefficients, and I will show you here again our subtotal. Our subtotal. Here we see that agriculture on the output side has delivered, we would say now 51, 52% of its output to all the 20 branches in Mongolia in the year 2010. Now let's go back to our output coefficient. Agriculture has sold to all the 20 sectors an amount of 51.6, that's the same figure. And this column, which is here yellow marked, that will be then, as we have just seen, our forward effect. Forward effect always take into account only the intermediate transactions. They never take into account the final use. It's only concentrated on the first quadrant of the input-output system. It never goes up to the forward effect, never goes up to the final use. So I will repeat. We compile input coefficient by looking for the columns of the input-output table. We divide the individual figures in the cells by the total input, sector by sector, and the total inputs are presented in the last row of our basic input-output table. Output coefficients show us where are the main customer, where are the main user, to whom the products are delivered, and we take also the absolute data from the I/O table, but we divide them not by the total input, but we divide them by the total output, and that is the last column of our IoT. Input coefficients that only refer to our core system, the 20 by 20 matrix, can be also called backward effects, and output coefficients only referring to the 20 production sectors, which you can just see here from this slide here. They can be interpreted as forward. It is nothing else. I think the people often make big presentations about forward and backward effects. I think it is a joke. It is a junk mail, I would say, because if they would be through telling the people what's behind, they have only to tell this is another interpretation of input coefficient and output coefficient. It is only a summing up of all the input and output coefficients. But they make special presentation, backward and forward linkages, and if you go behind, you identify, it is no more than what we know as input and output coefficient. If you look for the direct forward, that's important. So far we only discussed direct forward and backward linkages. Then later on we will come, also I think in the next presentation, we come to the total forward and backward linkage. And there it's a little bit more difficult because we include also the indirect flows. Now, we give you some small good practice examples. Here again we have to do, I think from the same seminar, some data about the input of motor vehicles manufactured in Germany in the year 1990. You see these are only direct inputs. What goods are used for producing a car? I think the other what I've shown was only explaining you graphically the steps of the backward effect. Here you see the amount for 1990 in Germany. What raw material, what prefabricated products are needed to produce a car. You see, these are all absolute figures. This is here in billion German marks. I think it's the time before we have the introduction of the euro. So you see, to produce a car, we need mainly engines, chassis, bodies, and components. 45.2 billion of German marks. The next one will be, I think, the built-up vehicles, 18.7. The next one will be chemical product, plastic parts and materials with 14.7 billion. Then iron and steel. Then non-ferrous metals, rubber, glasses, other materials, fuel, electricity, tools and other issues, instruments, and so on. So what we have here, it is not different from our input structure in column, but it has to be shown in a graph. You can also add up all the data, arrive at the total input, and make your input coefficient. If you add it up, I think I have not yet the total shown. If you let's see, we assume the total will be, I only make the assumption about 90 billion, I think 90 billion German mark. Then you divide 45.2 by 90, 13.8 by 90, and these are then what you have learned as input coefficient. These are the input parts as part of the co-structure of producing automobile, a car in Germany about 24 years ago. That is an interesting example I have used because I want to show that already in the United States, I think I have taken it from the paper or from the book of N.T. Carter. She has written in the year 1970 a book about structural change in the American economy. And what she has compared the first input-output, I think one of the first input-output tables that the Bureau of Statistics in Washington has compiled for 1947. And she compiled the results for 1947 with the results for 1958. You see here the coefficients from 0, 0, 0, 1 to 1, that is the total altogether, for 1947. We take it here, that is from 0, 1 to 1. And here you have the same on this, I think on the, which is the horizontal, and that is the vertical. So you see here the vertical for the year 47, and here for the year 58. Those are input coefficients. If the coefficients near or on this diagonal, they have not heavily changed or they are the same. But for example, if you look for some which I have here selected, coal mining. The coal mining, direct coal mining coefficient in coal mining itself was an infrasectoral flow. You see it is near the diagonal. It was here and in the other year it was also 0.02. More or less here. Nothing happened between 47 with regard to the input of coal in the coal mining itself. But if you look for the vehicle repair industry, for the repairing industry of vehicles, you can see in the year 47, this was the input coefficient 0.0006, and how it was in the year, I think 11 years later, it was only 0.02. That means the amount which was used for vehicle repair has increased heavily from 74 to 58. It has to do with more cars, and I think the cars are different in the United States from 47 compared with 58. But I think why I also present this to you, if you have 2 years where you compare input coefficients, I think it is an excellent form of presentation, because you see automatically here more or less nothing or not much has happened. Let's take the opposite example, transportation. Transportation had for the coal mining industry an amount of 0.02 as input coefficient in 47, and it has an amount of 0.01 11 years later. So you see the input coefficient for transportation was in Z58 lower than it was in the year 47. So you see here are more, I think, the coefficient that has decreased, and here you see some coefficient that have increased. For example, the best one is the business services. Business services in 47 are only 0.0004, and I think some years later they are now 0.001, they are increased heavily. So that is an example that you see that already in the 70s of the last century, the people have worked with some input-output. Why? Because the founder of input-output analysis, Professor Vassily Leontiev, the Russian, emigrated to the United States, and he developed the input-output analysis in the United States. He had written his first book in the year 1936, and according to that, I think N.P. Carter was a scholar or was a student of him. So she had written this book. I was a scholar, or I was at the Harvard Economic Research Institute. In the end, I think it was, I started 62 in the institute. It was the year 68 or 69. And I have seen her book, and I was asked to read proof. I thought, coming from abroad, from Germany, and I should read some pages of the book written in American. But according to that, I learned a lot automatically. If you have to read the proof, I think you ask the author what you mean with that, what you have done. So I think it is a very old, but for me it is a very impressive example for that reason. I have presented it, and you have already managed now the first of the 3 lectures this afternoon. Thank you for your attention.